This video is sponsored by TinkerTurf. Welcome, Wargamers, to another epic moment in Mortal Realms history, and today we're going to be taking a tale right from the pages of the Lumineth Realm Lord's book. And so, in full disclosure, I picked this story 100% because this last week and this last weekend, the units that were involved are revealed. Not all of them, but a good majority of them, and I could not be more excited. So, without further ado, let's jump into today's tale, An Arrow in a Gale. When the Blue Scribes lead a teeming shoal of screamers into the skies of Zertrek, the Elementari of the Slicing Gale hear their patron Wind Spirit howling in protest. The Temple Warriors race across the Zomostrarian desert after the invading Sky Shoal, their long-limbed riding beasts bearing them into battle at a breakneck pace so they can launch killing shafts into the swirling Sky Ray formations. The Blue Scribes themselves duel with the cloud-riding mages of the temples in scintillating explosions of magic that fill the skies. For a day and a night, demonic ectoplasm and the magical fire drizzle from the skies, yet still the Blue Scribes ride unharmed. Their arcane wards are proof against any arrow save one. The Slicing Gale itself takes form just as the Tzeentchian demons fly towards the Well of Epiphanies. Though the fox-faced spirit has borne the direst agony, it will not allow that sight to be profaned. On a spiraling weave of ribbons, the spirit rises, drawing back its bowstring and loosing a single deadly shaft that darts this way and that. Borne by living winds to circumvent every arcane ward as a snake would slip through the tangled roots of a tree, the arrow strikes Zirapa in the chest. Pterax is forced to screech an emergency incantation of stasis to prevent his brother from bursting into two brimstone horrors and igniting the piles of parchment gathered around them on their speeding disc. Opening a portal with a mystical gesture, the scribes flee back to the crystal labyrinth, their sky sharks alongside them. The Slicing Gale gives a cry of laughter before dissipating on the wind. Okay, that was awesome, except for the parts where it was incredibly hard to pronounce, but let's break this down for just a bit, starting with the characters involved. Firstly, there are the Blue Scribes. You may have heard me pronounce a few names that are a bit crazy. The Blue Scribes, we'll start there because they are the aggressor. In case you are not familiar, Blue Scribes are a pair of blue horrors handcrafted by the god Tzeentch for the sole purpose of recording all spells in existence. There's this legend that at one point in history, Tzeentch was truly supreme, like totally in charge of everything. Until the other Chaos Gods got jealous and basically kicked him in the teeth, which shattered the changer of ways his kind of hold on magic got broken, and sending it seeping into the real world. Now, I think that's clearly a myth by some, Tzeentchian followers, but it's how some cultures account for magics being, scattered around creation and varied in such forms. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but if Tzeentch followers believe it, I'm kind of hesitant to agree. What is true is that these two demons, named Pterax and Zirapt, that if you didn't catch it, it's the same name forward and backward, are true horrors amongst the realms. You see, blue horrors are these smaller demons. They're what you get when you kill a pink horror. It splits into two little blues. Individually, they are grumpy and annoyed at everything and kind of cold in their personalities. I think Tzeentch chose this form to ensure that they would do their task and kind of stick to their duty. Everything else is annoying, just let me do my job, leave me alone. And to each of them, he gave a gift and a curse. Because here's the thing. When these Chaos Gods are making these demons, it wouldn't do to have a lower demon running around with the knowledge of every spell, every busted OP spell is what we would say in the game, at their disposal. Of course, Tzeentch wants to be the most powerful. He wants to have all the spells. And so he did this. Pterax can write magical symbols, but he can't read. Zirapt can read his brother's spells, but he can't comprehend them. So this ensures First of all, their compliance. They need each other to get their jobs done. But secondly, it ensures that the database of spells that they are collecting as they write them down can't ever fully be used against their creator. They are never in a position where they're going to be the most powerful wizard that's ever wizarded in the whole mortal realms. So in combat, Zirapt will grab random pages of spells and recite them, casting them at the enemy, unleashing all these hellish magics, while his brother Ptirax sits there and kind of stabs at enemies from atop the Disc of Tzeentch. And these two come crashing into Hysh with a whole army of screamers. I'm sure being drawn here from all the crazy spells and magic and disciplines going on with the Lumineth Realm Lords, but in particular, they come to the continent of Zatek, often regarded as the most magically focused of the Lumineth Realm Lord domains, and so this is a match made in heaven. But it wasn't some major city that was first alerted to the demon army coming in, it was the Elementari of the Slicing Gale. Now, I'm just going to do a brief overview. There's a lot more detail to this, and if you want to know more, go check out my Lumineth Realm Lord series. I'll leave it in the description down below. But the Elementari being the temples of discipline, where the Lumineth Realm Lords study and meditate on the natural features of the realms. Well, the patron god, the spirit that houses in this Elementary, the temple as it were, was a wind spirit, screaming in protest to what was going on. Because I imagine this chaos army is flying in, and the sheer power of its dark nature is like revolting to this spirit. And so, the temple warriors are dispatched. And based on the description that we have, it's safe to say that these are what we now know as Hurakan Wind Chargers, which I'll throw a picture up here now. Along with them are powerful mages held aloft by the clouds themselves, models that we haven't seen at the time of this recording, but I'm sure we will soon. Now at this point, this cloud of demons is rolling across Hysh with an incredibly fast army of Lumineth devoted to the aspect of wind in pursuit, and for several days they trade blows. There's kind of a weird stalemate. It's this constantly moving, rolling kind of warfare. It's on the move, but it's not really like having a decisive edge one way or the other. And they kind of get stuck like this for several days until the aspect of the wind that was first alerted to all of this takes form itself. Now, we've learned from the Alarith, the mountain aspect worshipped by some Lumineth that came out when the faction was first released, those are the guys with all the bull motifs, that getting one of these mighty spirits of the realm to truly take form is very uncommon. They generally don't want to be bound to a physical form, but at this point, enough is enough. This chaos army is functionally a poison or a contagion within the air, the sky, and the winds of Hysh, and it needs to be dealt with. And while the model we saw in the specific reveal show has an actual name, so it's probably the named character version of whatever this is, I think it's fair to say, based on the description, this is essentially what we are looking at here, and I'll throw it up on the screen for you. If you are listening to this, it is the kind of fox guy held aloft by ribbons. Go check it out on community page. And this thing fires an arrow straight into one of the blue scribes. And yeah, if you didn't know, when a blue horror dies, it splits into two brimstone horrors, tiny little fire spites that are super annoying. They're almost like a Tzeentchian version of Nurglings, where they're kind of that happy but mischievous, kind of destructive thing. And so the whole army of Tzeentch stuff crumbles as one blue horror tries to keep the other from igniting all of the paper that they've been writing these spells down on. Again, they are blue horrors, they are super grouchy, they just want to do their job. Well, all of a sudden, that job is in a real jeopardy. And my favorite here is actually the last line, and it's talking about the wind spirit that fired this arrow. It gives a cry of laughter before dissipating on the wind, and that is some serious troll energy right there. Imagine if you're playing against a buddy who's like rocking an army that's kind of centered around a big model like Archaon or Nagash or Teclis or anything like that, and you take that guy out and you just start deep throat laughing. Ha ha ha! It's my favorite. And while this story was very simple and very self-contained, it can get us excited for the release of the new wave of Lumineth, because I think what we are seeing gives us a real idea of how they function in the lore, and to some mild extent within the game. And so, like always, I want to take a step back and talk about why this is so friggin' cool, right? Between the demonic incursion, new units that we didn't have context for, and a literal force of nature walking the realms, there's a lot to talk about, and we're going to do that right after this quick word from today's sponsor. So today I wanted to talk to you about TinkerTurf. TinkerTurf is an incredible company that's been lowering the barrier to entry into this hobby since about 2018 with the launch of their TinkerTurf terrain set. Simply put, these are innovative little modular terrain systems that kind of snap together like Legos, and they allow you to create some incredible landscapes, but they come in these very cool sci-fi themed kits that I think you're going to love. They asked me to shout out to a Kickstarter they have going right now with some very unique designs that I wanted to show off. One of the pieces, I'm actually going to show it to you right now. This is the SATCOM array. Now, let me tell you a real life story about why I'm so excited about this. It has to do with the structure's height. You see, back in Seattle, I was actually playing on TinkerTurf terrain unknowingly at a local game store. The store owned it. And we're playing Necromunda, and this one Gene Stealer cult player thought he'd be real dodgy, and he got up on top of what is essentially this. I'll show the picture here. It's the MacLeod station. And he got up there and he was taking pot shots at us, but none of us could really reach him. So round 3, I'm like, forget this. And I turned everything and shot at him. Now, I couldn't actually hurt him, but there were enough shots to make him fall. And when he fell from that height, he landed on the ground, which in Necromunda terms, basically in terms of damage, he took like a last gun, like a cannon shot to the face is basically how the damage panned out, but he survived. And all of us were cheering and screaming and having a wonderful time whooping and hollering about it. It was just the coolest thing. But the reason that story is so significant to me is because it's a perfect visualization of why these kinds of terrain sets matter. In addition to the SATCOM array, they have a few things here. I'm going to read them off here. They have the perimeter walls, including a rad guard tower and a door that actually opens. I love that one. Of course, I mentioned, obviously, the train station, but they have a new train set with tracks, so you can actually have that kind of cutting and dissecting your battlefield for cover and stuff. All of it's modular, and it works with all of their existing terrain products. So if you would please head on over after this video is done to the link in the description down below, check out their Kickstarter, support these guys, support small businesses who make this hobby so rewarding for us. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to the video. Okay, so why is this story so stinking cool? First off, the demon incursion, and for context, it is really important to understand the Lumineth Realm Lords. Again, go check out that series. The elves went whole hog into studying the weaponization of magic, and ultimately, this is back in the 8 Days of Myth, it led to a near-apocalyptic event called the Spirefall, where the intense amount of power and arcane might tore literal holes in the fabric of the realms, and demons just poured in like a dam had broken. Well, from this, Teclis learned a way to heal these kinds of wounds in reality, how to patch up these rifts in nature and stop the demons from coming out. And while there are some real great stories within the Lumineth battle tome, one stands out in particular as being very relevant. I promise we're going to get back to our main story here, and that is the Battle of Simulacra. In this story, it's made clear that if demons have a chance, they are actually able to reopen these old rifts, which is massive because your city or your country, if they get too comfortable, can suddenly have a demon army pouring into their area, and you are just out of luck. And I say all of that to kind of point out that this isn't just a funny pair of blue horrors flying around with some floaty manta rays. This is an army that could devastate a continent if allowed to. And so it immediately shoots the stakes way up with that knowledge. The idea that if they were to dispense, arcane fire or something like that directly on one of these rifts, an entire next army could pour in with a big open wound. So not only is this, tainting parts of reality in the sky and making all the wind spirits go nuts, it has the potential to detonate a much larger catastrophe. Now next we have the units, and while this story is light on description, I do think it tells us a bit about everything, we see is meant to be incredibly mobile. And that's mobile in a way I don't think the base Lumineth Realm Lord's cavalry on horseback can handle. mages have harnessed the power of the winds to such an extent that they can use it as a mount. Creatures can physically keep up with this flying warband even on ground, which is actually an incredible ability to traverse terrain because Hysh is not necessarily flat, which means they're vaulting over hills and mountains and jaggy peaks and all this kinds of stuff to keep up with the blue horrors. The fact that all of the attacks we see depicted on models and in the story are at some point held aloft by the wind. By that I mean arrows and magic that lashes out. I'm sure they have melee weapons like the hero that was shown to be riding a different kind of beast, but for everything else, including the manifestation of a wind spirit, uses a bow, or at least some kind of ranged ability. And in my mind, what we are seeing is the wartime manifestation of them trusting in the winds, right? Tapping into that power in a radically different way from, say, a normal archer. That every stab at evil is in some capacity an act of trusting the power or discipline you follow, whether that's an elf on the back of like a kangaroo-style mount or a demigod of the winds rocking a bolt thrower like it was a rifle. And it was this kind of attack that was able to pierce deep into the Tzeentch army and ultimately shut it down. And that's the kind of force of nature I was talking about. When it comes to things I'm excited for on the table, I want to see archers that do exceptional things, right? Obviously, they're going to have a shooting attack. I think that's probably very safe to assume, but I do believe that there will be something unique that makes them archers of kind of a devoted spirit of the wind rather than some guy with a bow. All in all, it is a very simple story, not one I'd usually pick, but knowing what we do now about these units breathes so much excitement into it for me. There's machinations of Tzeentch with terrible potential, their presence as a straight-up offensive thing to the realm itself, and we get to see what I've wanted to see for so long, and that is the realms fighting back, right? It wasn't an elf that won, it was the natural spirit of the realms taking form. This is the kind of stuff I love, and I want to see more of it. So I'm going to pause here. Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. Which of the units were you most excited to hear kind of shouted out a little bit, even though we had no context for them before? And what do you think about the blue scribes? Is that a kind of villain that you like to see when the kind of weird machinations that Tzeentch put in play to make them do their job? And how else would you like to see the power of wind, that discipline, that arcane nature, manifested? Let me know in the comments down below, and I look forward to catching you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.